our next session or segment, I invite Alan to introduce on the basis that he's going to talk a little bit about the value that these Wagyu crosses are bringing to different beef enterprises in the state, and then we'll move into the bull management program at Blythewood. Hello to you, Alan, and over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I guess the interest in Red Wagyu, or their proper name, Akaushi, is that they are a little bit different from a black Wagyu. They actually they look a bit more like a beef animal than a dairy animal. Yet they still are able to marble very well. And there certainly is interest in beef from at least 50% Akaushi, both domestically here in WA and internationally. I guess that was confirmed in a visit to Texas last year, where we saw what they're doing over there with Akaushi cattle, and particularly a company called Heartbrand that specialise in the production and marketing of 50% plus Akaushi beef. So in their case, all their cattle the only cattle that can get into their brand, Heartbrand, has to be at least 50% Akaushi or more. They're on a natural feeding program, which in the US means no hormones or ionophils in the feed. And we were pretty impressed. John Dawkins, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
John, you just might want to comment about the domestic demand and your program with Akaushi cattle.
Yeah, well, so briefly, we're a paddock to plate operation specifically. So we've got 4 pubs in WA and supplying our own beef through to the pubs. My father has a medical background, and so I was always interested in human health. And in the last 20 years, sort of increasingly, we've managed to merge the two. So that was how our interest in Wagyu started. Initially black Wagyu, which was what everyone has heard about, but then quickly moved to Red Wagyu and have since locked in on those as our preference. We've been using them primarily as a bull to use over our commercial, essentially Simmental female herd, producing an F1 for short feeding. So sort of 100 days. When I say short feeding, I mean 100 days as opposed to the Wagyu style feeding, 300, 400, 500 days. And what we found for ourselves when we went from our commercial, essentially Simmental herd to the F1, we got a significant improvement in eating quality and marbling without actually, surprisingly, much drop in the daily gains. So for us, the majority of our market in our pubs is, 80 or 90% of our demand is for what I would call standard food service steaks, I guess. Good quality without being kind of $100 rockpool steaks. And for that, we've found the F1's been great. We've gone from a sort of 0 or 1 marble score with our straight simi to a 1 to 3 from the same time on feed, and still getting 1.5 kilo a day sort of gains, plus or minus. And then demand for the high marble products. We do use high content and feed for longer, and I found that for that game, the reds are also quite good. So although we still have some blacks now, we're probably gonna slowly phase out the blacks completely and focus on the reds. So we've been very excited, and hence the interest in Heartbrand and collaborating further.
All right, thanks, John, for that background. So the reason that the McClartys have got some Akaushi is that we really need to see how the breed goes out with other producers, and the McClartys have been very helpful in agreeing to use some bulls, and they've now got some calves on the ground. So we're quite keen to follow those calves through to weaning and then through to backgrounding either on grain or on grass as finished products to see how they hang up in the abattoirs, and then look at doing some taste tests on the beef. What are your thoughts, Nick and Lee, as far as the Red Wagyu go? What do you intend to do with them?
Yeah, I suppose that's something we haven't really thought of a lot. As I said before, the main reason we got interested is because of our past history with the shorthorns in the long-fed program at Rob Noddle's at Newbury. I was fortunate enough to go to Japan, and that's the first time I saw Wagyu. But we were actually getting marbling, or Rob Noddle was getting marbling scores, Rob and Di Noddle were getting marbling scores. I just can't remember what they were, but they're very high. I think they're up in the fives. They're actually substituting that shorthorn meat as Wagyu into the Japanese market. Now, Rob said don't say anything about it. It's a great thing they're doing that. But that's why we've always been pretty keen on giving this a go. It'll be interesting to see what sort of marbling scores we can get with the Wagyu shorthorn cross. But as I said before, whether it's going to be commercially viable or not, that's going to be, time will tell. As I said, the calves have actually landed on the ground a lot better and a lot bigger than we thought they would. But John sort of said before, like the Simmental's their weight gains have been good, and that's what we're looking at. It all comes down. The bottom line is, dollars in the pocket. So if we aren't going to be paid for the product, and we're going to be giving up carcass weight, well, perhaps it doesn't work. But we're going to give it a go, and it's going to be a great experiment. And perhaps this time next year we can have a Wagyu tasting session at a barbecue, which would be quite nice, and we can talk about what the results are doing.
Yeah, definitely look forward to that, Lee and Nick.
Great.
Anybody else got any questions about Akaushi or Red Wagyu?
John just mentioned that the Wagyu cross had a similar, but I interpreted a slightly lower daily gain compared to his Angus herd in terms of daily gain. Presumably, in terms of returns, that's more than outweighed by the value of the meat on a per kilo basis.
Yeah, we've the additional eating quality we get far outweighs any drop in daily gain. But actually, we've found personally that the drop in daily gain has been little or none. Maximum 0.1 kilo a day. So we're really fascinated to see whether our experience holds true with other people's cattle and breeds. But no, for us, it means that we're getting steaks that we can quite happily or easily sell at $40 a plate, whereas maybe with a straight Simmental it would have been a bit harder, more around the 30 or 35. So on that basis, we've been able to pay, in this case ourselves, but we're able to pay ourselves more for the carcasses. So it's all internal, so of little value, I suppose. But we actually pay the farm $9 a kilo carcass weight for our 100-day fed F1s, and can make that work through using it ourselves in the pubs. But obviously there's a little bit of a, cutting out a middleman benefit in that. But no, we're very happy. Would never go back.
And John, in terms of the long-term production system that you set up to produce these Wagyu crosses, how are you going to sustain that? Is it always going to be just a 50%, so it's a half-half cross? It won't become a three-way cross or something like that?
No, this is interesting. A lot of the discussion I had in Texas with the Heartbrand guys that Alan mentioned was around this issue, because our long-term aim is to get a marble score 3 to 5 from 150 days or thereabouts, without obviously dropping to so that's the big aim. Whether it's possible or not, we'll see. But in talking to the Heartbrand guys who've done, so they've got 5,000 or 6,000 Akushi cattle, breeders, and they put through, I think it's about 12 or 14,000 a year. So only about a quarter of the cattle going through their program are their own, and the rest are F1 from all of the producers that they provide bulls to. So they've seen F1 progeny from all of the different breeds in all of the different conditions in Texas and surrounding states. But personally, they've also done all of the stuff in between in terms of grading up. And I mean, they've obviously gone down the pole line. So they've got a number of pole purebred Akushi cattle and so on and so forth. They reckon that if we went to an F1 female herd producing F2s, in that F2 calf, we'd drop, they reckon, about 0.1 kilo a day, maximum 0.2, but they think 0.1, and pick up 1 to 2 marble scores potentially on 150. They feed for 250 days, we feed for 100, so it's not quite apples for apples, but they would guess that on 150 to 200 days we might pick up a marble score or two. So for us, that would work. As I said, in the F1, and they were not surprised that we haven't seen daily gain decrease in the F1. So for us, it'll be interesting to test the next step and see whether that daily gain drop from the F1 to the F2 without the hybrid vigor does end up in a 0.1 or 0.2 kilo a day drop. And if we do get the 1 or 2 marble score increase, but we personally would take that, because for us it would still work out better, because we'd have a really distinctly premium steakhouse type product.
Yeah, John, that's great. You answered exactly where I was leading to, and so I didn't have to ask any more questions. Back to you, Alan, I think, to introduce the bull program.
Thanks, Tim.
Alan, could I just ask a question of either you and John?
Yeah, sure.
I went to a sitting one day. We tried a few Akushi cross steaks one day, and I was told there's a great advantage in the fat of the Akushi against other breeds. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was what actually led us into Wagyu in the first place, because of Dad's interest in human health. And Heartbrand have also had 10 or 15 years experience on the marketing of the beef. So interestingly, just as a slight aside before I answer directly, they say that whilst they used the health side as their primary marketing tool initially, they soon learnt that actually it was better to start with quality and then mention the health secondarily, because they won customers with the quality and then they retained them with the health side. But in answer to your question about the health, the simplest way to summarize it would be that the Wagyu cattle have a lower melting temperature of fat and a higher proportion of oleic acid. So it's more like olive oil and less like butter, I guess, if you like. And it has been seen that if you eat, so they did some trials in the US at Texas A&M, and if you ate the lower melting temperature fat beef, which you find in Wagyu cattle, you can improve your HDL-LDL ratio. Not so much total cholesterol, but the ratio, which apparently is more important in a relatively short time, six or 8 weeks. So basically, for us, it's pretty exciting because the lower melting temperature fat also seems to give a taste benefit, which I guess sort of melt in the mouth, like we find that the beef is tastier, but actually at the same time it's healthier. So pretty nice. Not very often you can get something healthier and tastier at the same time. So we're pretty excited about that.
The other thing you might note is that it only takes one cross with Akaushi to get these benefits of lower melting temperature fat. At least that's what you found, isn't it, John? With
yeah, so our normal beef Simmental, and you know, other Euro British breed crosses we've done seem pretty consistently to start at around 41 degrees. This is the fat on the sirloin, thereabouts 40-41, and with grain feeding and improved condition, they do come down a bit, but not a great deal. They sort of settle, go from 40 to 41 to 39 to 40. Whereas in RF1s, without selection for melting temperature, just pure breed effect using a random selection of our Red Wagyu bulls, we saw that in 150 days or less, it would drop to close to body temperature, 37 degrees. So it seems like there's a very strong heritability of that lower temperature fat.